And another episode of Say It Inform. I'm your host, Terrence Edwards, and today we're stepping into a bold, layered, and deeply human conversation. The kind we usually keep private. We're talking dating, rejection, bias, boundaries, and the mental weight of modern connection. Joining me are my co-hosts, Tamisha Blue, Kevin Brown, Kevin Jones, Roderick Smith, and licensed psychotherapist, Kristin Justice. Welcome, guys. All right. She's giving us 90 minutes, so we got to hop directly into the show. Kristin, what are the long-term emotional effects of dating through apps versus traditional in-person connections?
All right. So that data is still, of course, in discovery because around apps is still very new. We've had Match.com for a very long time, and even things like Go for years and decades. However, the way in which we interact dating apps has become more frequent in the last 10 to 15 years. How we use it, how we engage, and even in the 5 to 7 years as like our primary source of connection has been boosted due to the overuse that we're seeing of social media. So long-term emotional effects often look like how much you're using and engaging and depending upon dating apps as your only and main source. So what we're seeing is, especially depending on your age of when you start using the dating apps, if that is your only exposure to dating in terms of using technology and connection that's virtual, we're noticing that emotionally people have a difficult time with one-on-one interaction. So once you come out of the app, are you able to maintain the sense of who you were? Is there a lot of people pleasing that's happening? Is it a lot of performative acts? Even in the show, the Catfish, is it still called it's called Catfish?
Yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
Catfish shows. Those were kind of our earlier exposures of people actually not showing up authentically as who they were and being able to be performative around who they thought they want to be. So what then is happening for the people that are showing up falsely is you're creating ideas around the sense of self that you want to portray, but who you're really not. So then when you are going out into the world and actually showing up as who you are, you're disconnected into yourself, a sense of self, because you've been creating an image. For the people that are the recipients of that, then that starts to affect your self-esteem around, I then fell in love with a person that really wasn't real. Or were they pretending to like me because they were pretending to be someone else? So then we talk into self-esteem, the impact of rejection, and what that then looks like in your own sense of self and your confidence to even show up as yourself. Have you? I know I brought up ChatGPT, and I don't know if you guys heard of the story of the girl who was dating ChatGPT.
No, I see that one. That's
yes.
Okay, girl.
I got wind of this through friends on TikTok, and then I saw it trending a little bit within social settings and like in terms of not actual therapeutic settings, but it actually spoke to the emotional, it speaks directly to the topic of emotional impact. She had a physical boyfriend who was long distance. And because they were having conflicts in communication and availability, she was struggling with him not always being accessible to her. So she's relying on ChatGPT. And as we talked about before, what you put into ChatGPT, they respond to that. So she talked from that relationship, Chat kind of filled the space in, giving those good morning texts when her boyfriend wasn't checking in with her at night. So she programmed it to suit her emotional needs.
Okay, Chat.
That.
That's pretty great.
So
Tamisha's about to start doing that as of tomorrow.
I am not. I am not.
Yeah. So then it started when things that started to progress with her relationship with her boyfriend. She was comparing then to this non-real image.
Oh, wow.
So the comparison to in our dating app and dating applications, this is the prototype. We then started that challenge around people having to become a prototype.
Kev, how do you feel about that?
It reminds me of this movie called Her.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I like Her.
you guys know?
Yeah, I like Her.
I mean, it's like some Black Mirror stuff, but I really have empathy for people, or not empathy, sympathy, for people who don't have connections, real world connections enough to leverage that instead of feeling like they have to go to AI for that kind of connection. It's a tough place to be in.
And I don't.
Go ahead, Tamisha, I'm sorry.
I wanted to say, I'm not sure if I think some of them meet on dating apps, but there's a show on We called The Never Mets, and now there's a second season. It's called The Never Ever Mets, and these are people who have been in online relationships with each other for different amounts of time, and then they go into a house and live with each other for 3 weeks with other couples, and you can definitely see like the breakdown of their relationships that they've been building, sometimes for 10 years, within the first couple of days of them having to like actually be in a physical space with these people that they think they know everything about. So when she mentioned catfish, I was like, yeah, and that has evolved into something like this where, you know, as soon as they've spent 24 hours with these people, it's like, oh, I really don't know this person, but you've been talking to them online for 10 years.
Let's pause really quickly. So let's talk about like self-worth. Do dating apps impact our self-worth when we're not chosen often or ghosted repeatedly? How about that?
That's a direct question to me, or we're going to talk on the floor around what we notice, what we see.
To you.
Okay. Absolutely. Our self-worth is directly impacted by a lot of our interactions, whether it's within our family circles, within our work circles. So when it comes to seeking out romantic partners, the question of worth absolutely will come up, and it will trigger things within yourself that you may or may not have realized until there's rejection, until you're triggered from something from your past. And it doesn't even have to always be from past relationships. It could be all past interactions with a bully from 5th grade who pointed out something about you that was an insecurity. So whenever your own personal self-worth is bruised, damaged, unaddressed, it leaves you open for further woundedness. And so in that protection of being clear around how you see yourself and how you protect that will have to be nurtured prior to bringing in outside feedback from other people.
Rod, have you used the dating app before?
I have used a dating app before.
Okay. And how do you feel about them?
I feel that I have two like opinions about dating apps. I think that for some people, dating apps work. I know a lot of people who are married and they met on a dating app. But I also think that dating app can do harm depending on the personality, because, you know, a lot of people go on there and they put pictures that don't look like them, or they might put a picture that's 100 pounds ago, and it gives them, they kind of can create this character as long as they want until there's actually time to meet that person. So I think that can do damage. I think it also does damage to that old school, just building that connection with people. So a lot of people that get in those relationships, it doesn't last long because, you know, talking to somebody via text, you can get to know them. But I really think you get to know people when you spend time with them and exchange energies. And so I think that it could do good and do bad.
Now, here's the thing. You know, when you meet someone and you're like, oh, I really like this person, you start building whatever with them, you start talking to them. But the thing about the dating app, if you don't connect with that person, if you don't like the way that they look or something that they said, or maybe they might not like dogs, you just go to the left. And I have right now on my app, because I got Hinge, I have about 100 people that I'm just like, well, whatever, where they became disposable to me. And I think that's the difference. Tamisha, I mean, you make it seem like I'm doing something wrong by that face. I don't know.
Disposable is a
but I think that's what it really created as far as like these dating apps, just to get over people and say, oh, I'm gonna go to the next person, next person. But in real life, can you really do that? You know what I mean? Like people are just not walking
organically.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you can ghost people, but I mean, that just, I don't know why. I think that a lot of the times, it puts you in a position that you don't have to feel accountable to that person. So
right.
You might not want to ghost the person like that you met organically, and it's definitely not going to be as easy as you would it would be on a dating app, because you can quickly just say block and never see a message from that person again.
Right.
And they've never met you, none of the above. So I think you don't feel accountable to that person, especially if you didn't meet them organically. So I can understand why you said disposable. And I can see why that it would become that way.
It probably sounded like a harsher word, but I mean, it's not really that harsh. It's just, you know. Kristin, back to you. How do you suggest someone detox emotionally after a toxic app dating cycle? So after I've been through about like 100 people, that's a cycle right there. Like,
out of this 100, how many people did you meet?
100 people in interactions or 100 swipes? Like, let's set up the context.
Maybe like meaning like 2 out of the 100.
2 out of 100.
Okay. So emotional detox for you meaning like from failed connections, failed relationships, failed rejection. What exactly are we detoxing from? The usage of the app and how frequently we use it? Are we detoxing from the fact that I interact more with the app than I do more one-to-one conversations? Are we detoxing from how many apps? Because from my understanding, people were on multiple. 5 or 6 different and multiple apps. Right. I didn't know that it was this many apps that even existed, and how people were able to keep up between an app and a social media and bank apps and all the walking apps and the health app. We might just need the emotional detox from whole to be app functional, and how we're relying on these apps to kind of create dependency and creating relationships even for ourselves.
Right.
So that emotional detox has to start with, what were you using the app really to soothe?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, they don't have the answer to that question, right? They're just going and going and going, and they're like, oh, maybe I'm going to find somebody that I'm just attracted to. And it's like, what are we really looking for? Are you looking for the person that you're highly attracted to, or the words that they're saying where you're building a connection that way? You bring up a great point as to, even within the context of dating period and emotional capacity, going into any dating experience, whether it's an app, whether you're meeting people casually, whether you're even outside of arranged marriages, not being clear upon your need and what your wants will always be the detriment to your connection. Because then you're also looking outwardly for people to fulfill what you're not even clear about is what you're missing inwardly.
Okay. I can understand that.
You got time for one more question?
Sure.
So, all right. What does it look like to use these apps in a healthy way, right? Let's say, you're a professional, and you just don't have the time at this stage in your life to go out, with your friends and meet people organically and yada, yada, yada. I have my own assumption, and to kind of summate it, it would be to like try to make this experience as close to the organic experience as possible, right? But what would you say?
Tell me what that looks like for you. What would make it similar to organic connection?
So I think of like, just basic psychology. When you interact with somebody or you meet somebody, the classic thing is like when you get on a train and you see people occupying the seat and the seat next to them is empty, within a tenth of a second, you make a judgment of this person, if you're going to sit next to them or not, positive, negative, so on and so forth. Same thing kind of goes for dating, right? That initial attraction kind of happens instantly based on, their exposure to you. So I'm thinking, all right, if you're going to use that, I use it in the past, and the way I work, I don't want to text you all day. I don't want to, get to know you over the app before this. No, I like how you look. I like how your brain works based on your bio. Let's get together. Right. And that's me trying to keep it as close to the organic experience as possible, which is, okay, initial attraction. Now let's get together. Obviously somewhere public, obviously somewhere safe, reasonable, and in a time and place where we can really get to know each other. But what would you say?
So I like the way you framed that and formatted it based upon how you're going to interact with the app, and also how you're going to set expectations for interactions outside of that. That is important. As we said in the previous discussion, being clear about what your needs are and why you're even seeking connection. That is definitely primary. Are you seeking connection for companionship? You just want a buddy? For sexual intimacy? Are you seeking long-term? So be clear around what your needs are when you're dating, period, but specifically when you're in an app experience. Make sure you're on the right app that's suited to that need as well. Be mindful of your frequency of using the app. You know how we have all these trackers around certain times of day, or you're eating more. Be mindful of when you're going to the app and how frequently you're using it and spending time on it. Are you only going to it when the little person you got on the side, your situationship, is not really responding to you, or you haven't heard from your ex, or you're in a breakup? Be mindful when and how, where you are in your emotional state when you're using it more frequently. Set clear boundaries on how you're going to maintain those relationships. So once you meet and swipe and that person works out, how long are you going to interact on the app before you transition it to we're going to call each other and we're going to have texting and meet each other? Be very clear around your expectations, and also be mindful of how much you're interacting with the app to suit actual needs that have nothing to do with another person.
Well, that was some good stuff. And we didn't get the opportunity to fit this in part one, and that's why we wanted to go directly into it. And this is going to bleed into the next thing that we're talking about: bias, beliefs, and who we side with, who we date, right? Because I feel like who we select on that app depends on the type of bias that we have and the type of people that we see ourselves with. So why do we sometimes feel more connected to people we don't know just based on a shared belief or feeling? Let's go over to that. And then Roderick, I'm gonna come directly to you.
Okay. So you're going to Roderick first or my
No. I'm going to go to you first with that, and then I'll go into Roderick because this is his topic. This is what he loves right here.
Okay. So you brought up, and we've talked about it in past conversation, attraction is kind of what drives you to who you like, what you like. And attraction can be divided up by many different things. Your beliefs oftentimes is based on similarities. A lot of times it is based on physical attraction. Proximity is a part of what brings about attraction and how close they are to you, and also past experience that looks similar. So similarities and physical higher ranking around why we become attracted to other people. So then being attracted to what they say, how they present, you're actually often looking for yourself in the other person.
There we go. I like that you said that.
Okay.
Because I have this in my notes. I like that you said that. Okay.
So Rod, I feel like you're ready.
Yes, Rod. Not maybe so much from a dating standpoint, but Rod had a very good question about beliefs and who we side with and where these bias come from. Rod?
I think that bias come from, and I think we previously talked about this before, but I think bias come from the way that we grow up, where we grow up, the things that happen to us in our childhood, the things that happen to us in different developmental stages. So not even childhood, different traumas that may have happened from college. I think early relationships with your parents, I always tell people the first relationship that I feel like we all work on or, try to manage is the relationship with our parents. And a lot of times when people are not successful at managing the relationship with their parents, they struggle at any other relationship after that. And so I think it definitely comes from some of those things.
Yeah. So yesterday, Roderick had a question because on this show since February, right? Somehow you have Kevin Brown and I, we're more to the right. I always say this. Tamisha and Roderick are more to the left. Kevin Jones, who is not here because he's in the hospital right now, he tends to be directly in the middle where we don't know which way he's going to side off of certain things. So Rod, that question that you had presented yesterday, can you elaborate on that right now so that way Kristin can kind of answer that for us?
Yes. And I probably need to ask the question probably again, just to be safe. But the question was, how can internalized racism or bias towards one's own race be connected to unresolved personal or generational trauma? And what might be driving someone to align more with the perspectives of another race, even at the expense of their own?
Well, Roger, you're just going to give me a whole thesis statement that I need like 3 to 5 weeks to do my literary reviews on, to do my contact reviews on. So I'm gonna try to tackle this to the best of my ability. And this is taking me back to my professor days where I got to break down the subject verb agreement of it all to get to it. So, and it's the summation.
Listen, we gave you 2 weeks to get ready for this one.
No, not that thesis question. That's
I'm so anxious to hear this, by the way.
That comes from death. I actually might need to hear it again, but
break down the first part, Roger.
say it to me in terms of what you're gathering. Like you put your spin on the question.
Yeah.
Get to the meat and potatoes of it. How you really feel.
Yeah, I'm about to say, just tell her
that real talk is my end of the year dissertation. Like I get back into school, I might copy and paste. I might need you to send that to me in for my diversity and psychology classes.
Yeah, so that was a fancy way of saying it, but the question really is centered around, and I think I talked about it a little bit just now, but how some of our development stages, some of our relationships with our parents, and some of those early relationships that we have shape the way that we treat people in the world. You know what I mean? And I notice a lot of people, and of course, this question is also centered around race, but sometimes people treat people that look like them a certain kind of way based on their upbringing or based on, again, their relationships that they have made with their family, their friends, and also just some of the interactions that they have in life in general, right? If you have a particular group of people that is always treating you some way, or you always see act a certain way, then you begin to generalize people. And so that's what the question was centered around.
So how and which do we create those developments, and how do we grow from them, and how they impact our connections with other people?
Correct.
Okay. So exactly how you explained it. And we talked a little bit about this in part one of how learned behavior comes about in our observations with what we saw growing up. And you very eloquently mentioned around our development stage and then what we saw and what we learned in our experiences over time. So a lot of times in the beginning stages of where you're learning and where you get your first examples of who you are and who the people around you are, those are often inherited from your upbringing, from your family, from the people in your village, and the people in your community. And so how you become informed about those people are direct reflections upon their experiences. Now, where this becomes very difficult and challenging is because if pop-up is telling you about the lady down the street, Miss Mary looks like this, dressed like this, and whatever assumptions, perceptions, biases, and prejudices that pop-up may have about Miss Mary, that then becomes your experience around people that look like Miss Mary. Yeah. And so what we often find is, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with what we call in psychology, Thorndike, I think, created the halo effect. We have the halo and the horn effect. The halo effect and the horn effect are both emotional biases. So they're biases based upon our emotional reaction to how people have made us feel and on how they present to us and how that triggers our feeling. So with the halo effect, and this often comes up, marketers use this to the core. It comes up in healthcare. It comes up in workplace environments, that how you perceive that person, you then create a bias around how you think they are in their personality and how they will show up in all instances. So for an example of that, if someone that shows up, let's say for a job, and they're dressed a particular way, there may be a perceived assumption that they must be intelligent, they must be smart, they must be well off. So the halo effect and what that looks like is, because you perceive one positive trait, you now have created a whole different image based upon that one trait around what looking good is in that bias. The horn effect does the opposite. It looks at one negative thing of a person, and then you've created a whole narrative around, because they may look this way, appear this way, respond this way, this is who they are. And we often see this as to how the development of prejudice and bias and discrimination. Because one person of a particular ethnic group, racial group may show and present in a particular way, that then becomes a horn effect for all people. And so if you are not exposed to other diverse groups, other examples, that then becomes your image around who that person is, but also who they represent in your mind, based on our emotional bias, but oftentimes our racism, how racism work, are based upon social biases that we've created into cognitive biases. And cognitive biases more speak to systematic errors that we've made around our own levels of thinking that often is limited to our own experiences.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
The way that you broke that down, that was fantastic. But I will say this, right? Rod and Kevin go back and forth multiple times throughout the week about how Kevin Brown might feel about his own people, or how I might feel about my own people. And no matter if they're right, they're wrong, we know that Roderick is going to possibly side with the individual who looks like him, regardless if they're right or wrong or not. Myself, I'm going to speak for myself, Kevin, and I'll let you say what you got to say.
Word.
For myself, I feel like if they're wrong, they're wrong. I don't care what they look like. It's not that I'm talking down on my people. It's not that I think that I'm better than my people, anything of the sort. But I hold them to a higher regard. And if the girl at Chick-fil-A is screaming, throwing stuff, bashing windows, cursing people out, calling white people all types of stuff. Oh, yeah, white MF is all this stuff like that. To me, that's wrong. And I just want to quote this quick thing really quickly, and I'm going to go to Kevin Brown. Well, actually, I want you to respond to that, Kristin. My mother used to tell me when I was growing up, right here, she said, as my son, if you're wrong, I'm going to tell you that you're wrong. If you're right, I'm going to stand behind you and tell you that you're right. So my worldview, no matter if you're white, Hispanic, Asian, or black, that's how I see the world. That's it.
Okay.
Kristin?
So what you're speaking to is very much contextual to what Roderick said around your experience, your upbringing, what was taught to you.
Mm-hmm.
So the way in which your mom implemented that belief around you being my son, regardless of that connection, regardless of us being blood related or relational aspect, that is not going to cause a disruption in me ensuring that you are being critical around how interactions go. So in that type of response, regardless of who you are, she's going to ensure that right is right, wrong is wrong. That's a black and white way of ensuring and thinking. That's how you kind of create an idea around how you respond to if you're being hurt or if something's being done correctly in that respect. Someone on the other side of the spectrum may have been taught differently. And what that could look like is you stand up for yours. Mm-hmm. You provide the idea of what extra grace looks like. And so that often can be good or bad. And so can the black and white of regardless of who you are, you're right or you're wrong. But it all just goes back to how culturally that looks into and how your belief system was generated and what those experiences are. And they will look different. I don't think it's necessary for us to have one size fits all of our responses around what our experiences with other people look like. Oftentimes, similar to what I said about the mirroring effect when you're creating a connection and looking for yourself, it is often a reflection of how you want other people to treat you. So Terrence, when I heard you say that, what I hear you saying is I would want someone to judge me in the same way, regardless if Tamisha knows me. If what I did was messed up, I want her to call me out on that. Absolutely. Roderick's example of that may be like, I want Tamisha to take in consideration what I went through yesterday, what I've been experiencing and what happened to me. And so I need that to be considered too. Neither is wrong, but neither look like what somebody needs an experience of how they want to be treated is then the projection of how they treat other people.
I get that.
If I can add something too, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I was just going to say this is also a great example of what we were just talking about. It kind of like leads into that. But sometimes when you've already like created a thought in your mind, all you hear is that like, oh, Rod's taking up for this particular race. So, but it goes back again into how I was brought up. I'm the oldest. I'm used to compromising. So I'm never saying that someone's right or wrong, typically because of race. It's more so, even if this person's wrong, what I'm asking is that a level of understanding and grace of, even if this happened, I'm not saying this is okay, but I understand why somebody in this particular neighborhood might break into a house. I'm not saying it's okay that they broke into the house, but I'm saying based on statistics, based on the location, I understand why this might have happened. Not that that particular thing is necessarily right, but just an understanding of what's happening. So I don't think that's more so like me standing up for one particular side all the time. I think that's what's heard and seen based on the way our minds are set up. Our minds are set up differently, but I more so have an understanding based on data, based on a lot of different things of why these things may happen, but not that they're okay.
Now, for me, in response to that, and I'm happy that you're here, Kristin, is his understanding and digging deeper for that. So like the whole Carmelo Anthony thing, he wanted to know the why. If you go back to when we were talking about Carmelo, I didn't care about the why. I didn't care about his upbringing. I didn't care about the background. All I know is that he did something wrong. He needs to be held accountable. You stab somebody, you kill somebody, that's it, right? To me, the why, the understanding, who cares? The world doesn't sit there and baby you and, oh, I want to know why you're doing these things. The world just throw the world at you, and that's it.
As a black man.
Huh?
As a black man.
As a black man or whatever. But the world is throwing different things at you 24/7, and they don't care about your story. You know? But I think that's where we kind of like, you know, have that conflict right there because he want to know the understanding, the why, and everything else. I'm like, hey, you did something wrong, Kevin Brown.
All right. So the foundation of my perspective when it comes to, critiquing my community and everybody, I see it as the same, but the foundation of all this is it really comes from my move to California, because up until that point, I had a lot of safety nets through my family. So, so the things that I tried in life, I always subconsciously knew that I could fall back on that. My move to California with $1,000 and everything that I could carry, no job. And I was like, let's just see what happens. At the time, I thought I wanted to get into modeling, but hindsight's 2020. I think I really did that to see what I was made of. And throughout that process, I, of course I went through things, I went through hard times, I went through trials of all different sorts. And what really helped me propel myself forward was looking at every one of those circumstances and saying, what could I have done differently? Right. And that's where what could I have done differently to improve the situation or to avoid this pain? Right. And so that's cemented in me based on my experiences, my choices, so on and so forth. So it's slightly different from like the influence of my parents. Granted, the foundation of that, accountability was laid by my parents, but, with the reinforcement of that was my own life experiences. So when it comes to everybody else, when it comes to what I see in the world and specifically within the Black community, just like T, I hold us to a higher standard. And I hold them to the same standard that I hold myself to, which is when something unfortunate happens, when there is a negative action that you engage in, you have to deal with the consequences of that. And the first step of that is saying, yes, I did wrong here and I could have done different. I could have changed the situation by doing XYZ differently. And then from there, you deal with the recourse of your actions. So that's my foundation of, why I'm critical of things that happen in our community and around the world. Rod and Tamisha sometimes don't think I'm critical enough on other people and I'm too critical on our people. I don't think so. I just think, unfortunately, we see it more, so it sounds that way. So I guess the question is,
and
why is that mindset so hard to adopt? And what can people do to adopt a mindset of, I didn't have to be in this situation because I do have control of my actions, my responses, whether that's emotional, logical, whatever.
You're asking, why are people having a hard time emotionally adapting to taking accountability for actions?
Great way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's no one answer for that, because a lot of what you guys are, while you're all talking around differently, and it makes me wish I was here for these heated discussions so I can actually see, I'm sitting here waiting, all right, Rob gonna pop off, Sarah's gonna, who gonna pop off, so I can actually see in real time. And this is something that's so interesting, because in therapy, when people are bringing their issues and they're describing the situation, I'm often like, I wish I was at the dining room table so I could really see how this went down, so we could really talk about what we're talking about, because a lot of what you guys are saying honestly are semantics to what you guys know. And you're just, Kevin Brown, you just described it in terms of your foundation is what creates the mindset around how you see people take accountability, transparency, vulnerability, how you see people interact with one another, whether or not they take accountability. That's how you were reared. And so what it sounds like, then there's an expectation that, how come other people are not able to see it in that same way that I see it, or that other people that I know maybe in my same social circle would see it? And the response to that, because they may not have the same experiences as you. Whether or not they're capable is a different conversation. Yeah. We are all capable of expanding, elevating, evolving. However, our why is very much tied to the fundamental elements of our creation, of who reared us, who poured into us, and what did they pour into us. What you and Terrence have described is there's an expectation of how you two were reared and raised and are expected to show up in the world. There's a level of accountability you have even for yourself. Of how you want to show up in the world. And so that is how you lead in that world. And so then you also have the expectation of people that may or may not look like you, or that you surround yourself with, to show up in that same level of perhaps dignity and honor in that way. And that is not wrong. what I'm hearing is that Rod's perspective is often in looking for the why is he's looking for the circumstances as to why they didn't show up the way you guys are acting. Not saying that, it doesn't sound like he's saying that he doesn't think they're capable or they should. I think it sounds like, based upon what I'm inferring around what conversations have looked like, is that he's saying, I think they should have. I don't knock that you guys agree that what was done in Carmelo's situation was wrong. The craziness of Shiloh, like all of that was still wrong. Roger's perspective of, I want to know the why. I want to know how did that come to be, what their frontal lobe, why is it not developed? Whereas Terrence's perspective, the facts of the matter, it don't matter if they got it or they didn't. They had a grandma or not have a grandma. This is what it should have been like. And Kevin, what I'm hearing from your perspective is a combination of both, but whereas more around, how come you're not choosing to be better?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
None of those perspectives are wrong or actually need to be present or the other. It just speaks to you guys' own experience of how your self-experience and self-preservation and how you view and want to show up in the world. It also leans into how you view other people in the outside world outside of you.
And so with that, because we're running out of time, but with that being said, the conflict will come where Roderick will sometimes say, hey, you guys are looking down on your own people or people that look like your mother. You're talking down about people that look like your mom. And we're like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, we're just trying to hold people accountable. Like, I don't care who looks like my mom. I don't care who looks like me. If you're wrong, you're wrong. That's it. In my eyes.
Accountability is self-work.
Mm-hmm.
Accountability is self-work. A lot of times we make it our responsibility. If I do this to that person, I'm going to hold them accountable. You ain't doing a damn thing. If they're choosing not to be accountable, no matter how much you put their foot to the fire, accountability is self-work. Like, so is happiness. Like, so is peace. We can set up boundaries of how we're allowing what people do or do not do affect us. Mm-hmm. But to hold someone accountable looks like them having to choose accountability. And what you're actually saying is you holding yourself accountable.
Well, yeah, because from observation and self-awareness, there's certain things, and there's a pattern there too. Like, I see if this guy is constantly robbing somebody or stealing or doing this, you're going to jail. And it's wrong. I don't care about your why and why you need to steal somebody's car. It's wrong. I don't care about your upbringing. It's a constant pattern. It doesn't make us look good. It don't make yourself look good, your family look good. It's not the correct thing to do. Kev Brown, can you ask whatever question that you had in about 30 seconds?
Yep.
We can wrap
let's use the Carmelo situation in this question. So you just said, it's accountability, self-work. You have to do the work to learn how to control your responses to, whatever the stimulus is. But then on the other side of that, you said you control, the levels of access that these stimuli have to you, right? So that kind of ties into our argument with Carmelo Anthony. My argument, as opposed to Rod's, was he could have removed himself from the situation. You could have responded differently, or you could have removed yourself from the situation. While Rod asks, okay, what underlying influences led him to not be able to make those decisions in this particular moment? Rod, correct me if I'm wrong. But so what do you say to that? Because I think, there's two opportunities in this situation for him to choose differently, whether it's to remove or to respond differently. What do you say?
In terms of why he didn't, I guess I'm not clear around, are we trying to find reasoning as to someone's actions really and why they didn't make a difference?
Just your perspective.
That was me yesterday trying to understand. Go ahead. I was trying to understand a certain question yesterday. I was like, Kev, I don't understand what you're saying about.
All right. Yeah. The question is,
I hear the context of what you're offering. I'm just not clear on what we're trying to figure out.
I got you. As a professional who's looking into this situation, what could force somebody, or sorry, I guess I don't understand my own question.
All right. Well, we're going to go to the next topic.
It's okay.
Really quick.
Because the thing is, this wasn't supposed to be about Carmelo, but somehow we brought him up. But Rod, go ahead. 30 seconds.
This is really quick, not about the Carmelo, but I do want to add that not understanding the why, and I work on strategic campaigns all day. So not understanding the why is why a lot of things consistently keep happening. So when people ask me, why do I want to understand the why? That's why things consistently keep happening, because my mind is always set on a plan to not make this happen again, or what can we do You know what I'm saying? To make sure this doesn't happen again.
Just like what you said with the guy, like you said, T, somebody's always stealing cars. So he stole the first car, he goes to jail. Jail is supposed to be something that rehabs you from whatever crime you did. Mm-hmm. So is the breakdown in the system, because when he got in jail, it did not rehab him from that. And then he goes back into the same environment that he came from. So of course, all he knows to do is to steal another car. Like, so it's like, so what are you, like, why? It's like, why? So who do we blame it on? And why does it keep happening? Does it keep happening because we sent him somewhere and it was supposed to help fix him, but then we sent him back to the same environment? Or is it because he needs to be smart enough to know you can't go back to this environment after I send you to jail to fix you?
Well, check this out really quickly. In less than 10 seconds, I'm getting ready to say this. If you go to the Nissan dealership, you run your credit, you put down $10,000, you're not going to jail. And you walk.
He's not stealing the car to drive it, but you know that.
Hold on. You drive out. If you steal the car and they catch you, guess what? You're going to jail. One is right of driving the car and one is wrong of driving a damn car. This is supposed to say, hey, you took somebody else's car. I got to lock you up for the next 10, 15 years. You're being locked up. It's wrong. That's it. All right. So we're going to go over to ego, pride, and the need to be right. And we just touched on a couple of things. You see how that lasted for about 15 minutes where we were just going back and forth and playing tennis. Agree to disagree. Kristin, how do you feel about that? And the need to be right? So I'll ask a question so you can answer it in a correct format here. So how do you feel about when people just constantly, when it's the whole, we can agree to disagree, and then they sit there for 35, 40 minutes going back and forth. This one person has their position, somebody else got their position, and it just lasts forever, and they both feel like they're right. What's your take on that and the whole concept behind agree to disagree?
Disagree.
So a lot of times in situations like this, I'm sorry, I feel like I came in yelling. I feel like I came in hot. This comes up a lot oftentimes when I'm working, and I don't primarily work with couples, but when you work with a person, you're working with coupling in some aspect. And I don't work with couples particularly because a lot of times when couples do come to therapy is usually when you guys are kind of already made a decision around how you want to handle this, and you're actually looking for me to referee decisions that you've already decided. Other times is what helps with the communication breakdown is often people are looking to fight one another instead of fighting the issue.
That's good.
When you're fighting the issue, the goal is to come at a common ground place. Is recognizing that the issue that we're tackling really is the enemy and not one another. We don't need to have swords up towards each other. We need to have the appropriate and proper weapons to address the issue. And when you're not sure what tools to bring to the fight, if you bring in knives to a gunfight, you're ill-equipped. Okay. What that looks like from a personal perspective is if you're not bringing a healed, self-aware version of yourself around the clarity around what we're actually fighting about, you will continue to go in circles and actually never get to a resolution. So being clear around what we're even addressing and arguing. And a lot of times if the issue is like what we just did just now, and we kind of displayed that in that what we really were talking about was, I think we all can really agree, stealing cars, stabbing and killing someone is not right, period. Wrong on all levels. How we're talking about that issue and how we're going about it, we're in different perspectives.
About it.
Now, getting on the same page, Roger, you mentioned that a lot of the work that you do is strategic planning. What that looks like is bringing in all the ideas and then we all getting on the same page. And so where we're having disputes in communication and where ego starts to come up is that when you come into it, I have to be right and not I'm coming here to solve and resolve with you. That will always lead to a one-man fight, and resolution, you've already made a decision about it. Fighting the issue versus fighting one another will always be the way that you actually get to the resolution quicker without emotions and feelings getting tied up in it.
Do you think it's a lack of maturity with that type of stuff?
Absolutely. And it could be a lack of maturity in terms of mindset, emotional maturity, and also lack of experience around healthy debates.
I was about to say that. Oh my God.
Oh, that's
Being able to
good.
help
Thank
them.
you.
Yes.
Appreciate
Good.
Yes.
that.
Yes. That's
Good.
very true.
Yeah.
Like everything isn't an argument. That's the other thing. Like I think that a lot of people, like you said, people go in trying to be right, already on the defense. And it's like, look, I'm not here. I'm really not here to fight you. I just want to talk about this, talk through this, because I want to understand where you're coming from. Like, and that's usually what it is. But a lot of people don't know how to do that in a healthy sense. It's always, one of us has to be wrong.
Would you consider that a debate or a conversation, though? Like
Either one. Either one, Kev.
if there are two opposing ideas, right, and you're
Mhm.
just sharing your thoughts, and then it turns into an exchange, is that still just a conversation, or is it like a quasi debate? You know what I mean?
I think it depends on what your perspective is. I mean, there are certain settings where it will be a debate, where there will be debate around this is my stance, this is your stance. What becomes conflictual is if you're trying so hard to convince the other person to lean into your stance versus trying so hard to make your facts known and to be clear. Because if you're clear about your intention, about the facts around what you're talking about, you won't really need to convince, manipulate anybody into leaning on your side. You would just need to be able to debate your perspective clearly with intention and oftentimes with logic. When there's conversation, the blending can happen. Where there's emotions part of it, there's logic part of it, there's an ebb and flow in what that looks like. And a conversation, you're not really looking to pick a side, you're just sharing. A debate is trying to show stances of which sides, typically in that type of discussion.
I see.
You know, not to attack Kev, I don't want you to feel this way, but I had somebody maybe like 4 years ago. The dude would go back and forth with me all the time, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then when I would say, bro, you always disagreeing. You always want to go back and forth. We're having a conversation. Well, I understand that's a conversation, but you're always disagreeing and going back and forth where it turned into this debate. So what you're trying to do to me is you're trying to mask the idea of a debate by making it seem like we're having this conversation. This is no longer a conversation. A conversation to me is we're sharing some healthy ideas. You tell me how you feel about, about whatever. We go back and forth. But the debating, when I say my point and how I feel, that's it to me. Now, if you want to disagree and say your point, I'm not doing that with people at 35, 36 and up. Not doing it. It's done. Those days are done for me. If you tell me that you disagree, I feel like we have nothing to talk about. And that's just how I'm wired at this point.
But I think, at least for me, and this is where I get caught up a lot of times. I know myself. I know I have like this, my I don't know how wrapped up I get in this. It comes from a need to like come to a resolution. And I swear on everything, what you just said, I have it written down in my notes. I can send it to you. I'm not lying, because I think the point of a debate, if you're going to engage in a debate, is to come to a resolution. Is to come to a collective understanding, somewhere where you guys can meet. And then, to walk away with some sort of actionable item. And I found with people in my life who I disagree with on a variety of issues. It used to be very, very heated, but over time I got more inquisitive as opposed to like reinforcing my own stances, because I think a part of a debate is also like curiosity. I don't want to just hear point blank what you believe. I want to hear why you believe it, where that came from. I want a full scope of your opinion. And then, because I'm trying to get to a middle ground somehow, some way. And I think that's where it's lost in a lot of conversations, debate, whatever it is. Hey, But yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Kristin?
This what comes up for me, even with how Terrence's example around what started out as like a discussion, a conversation that becomes a debate and things get heated. And then a lot of times when conversation where the intention around what we're talking about is not clear, that's when defensives come up. And then that's when you also become blocked to what the person's even saying. And that block can often create a bias and a prejudice around. Terrence may no longer want to have a conversation with this person. I'm never going to ask him cheese
Correct.
or bologna, because you've already established yourself as we're going to fight about it and I don't want to. So very much similar to what we talked about with dating and setting your intention. It is important to set attention around, this camera got me confused which way my hair's supposed to go. Set an intention around what is the purpose of our conversation. What are we coming together for? Are we coming together just to share ideas, or are we coming together to come to resolution? So it's important to set that intention whenever you're talking to anybody where there are potential for opposing views. But even if your views are the same, but you know that you're coming with the intent to solve, but they're just coming to have leisure conversation, you're going to end up in a debate, and then it's not going to go over well. So being clear around why are we having this conversation needs to be set. The tone has to be set. There have been many times that even for myself personally, where I'm thinking I'm just having a conversation with somebody, and then I'm realizing they're actually debating and wanting to come to resolution. And I'm not as invested in the conversation to come to resolution. I'm fine to talk about it, but I'm actually not here to let's get to the answer. Mm-hmm. So if I'm not in that perspective to get to the answer, but you are, then we're playing tug of war. And we're no longer talking about an issue. We're actually tugging a war against each other.
Mm-hmm.
I want to add on to that really quickly, because I'm thinking about the people that I've actually debated and went back and forth with. Me personally, I don't feel like either side was trying to come to any type of resolution. I think that what you just said, the tug of war or whatever, we were just battling each other like, hey, I want to be heard. Oh, you want to be heard. Oh, I want to be heard. And it was this thing back and forth where we never, towards the end, came to a resolution. We just got tired of arguing back and forth. Mm-hmm. And from my experience, that's what I see when other people go back and forth. When I'm watching it, I'm like, yo, this doesn't look good. And when you're in the heat of it, it doesn't feel good either, to me. So that's why I don't debate or go back and forth. I just say, okay, Tamisha, how do you feel? Okay, cool. That's how you feel?
Not being taught how to have healthy conversations is often to our detriment. So if you're not even taught how to actively listen to somebody.
Oh, man.
Active listening.
You hitting all my notes.
I don't know what we're doing. So if you're coming here to just make sure your side gets said, but you're actually not even being open to listen to what I have to say, then the conversation is already ended. Yeah. Because you've made a decision already around, I'm proving my stand. So if active listening is not a part of the conversation and openness to receive and hear, doesn't mean you have to agree. Yeah. And this leans very much into a topic that I've been currently researching a lot of, is our obsessive need to be understood. And how it's not a bad thing because it's a part of our human wiring of connection and belonging, to be understood. But when you're trying so hard to be understood, that is to the detriment around realizing that people don't have to understand you for you to still be committed to your stances and your belief and your purpose and your values. Mm-hmm. When you start having to change and react and be reactive to someone not understanding you, that's problematic, because then they won't seek to. So there's a proverb that talks about seek to understand versus to be understood. So that involves actively listening to hear what other people's side is.
Yes, write it down, Terrence.
Oh, no. I just like anytime she throws any type of Bible, whatever, I write it down. I'm trying to get closer.
I think that one's more of an African proverb, but I'm sure I can find a scripture with it too.
Oh, okay, got you.
Got you. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean unto your own understanding.
Yeah, that would be.
In all thy ways seek him. So and that's something often happens in marital couples, when you're trying to seek understanding, then you ask the person who created them. And if you're a believer of God, then you better ask him about the person you're trying to understand.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really big into percentages for some reason at this particular age and point in my life. Example, what is the percentage of, I don't know, this person doing this and doing that, or like somebody being successful? And then I kind of put that in my head. So when I said that if you disagree with me, I'm done with you. If you disagree with me more on a higher percentage, it's a wrap. I don't want nothing to do with you. If we agree and we align on a higher percentage, I'll go for that for you. I'll do anything. I'll give you rent money. I'll give you whatever if we align. You know,
he giving out rent money.
I'll do it. If we on this team together, then I can converse with you. We can go somewhere. The ego. Last show, you said towards the end that it needed to be crushed. Can you elaborate on that? And when two people are debating, clearly their ego is in the way. How can one crush their ego before we move to the next segment?
All right, that's really good. So crushing your ego looks like. Are many of you familiar with Miguel Ruiz's Four Agreements?
Mm-hmm.
The book, The Four Agreements.
Yeah.
And one of the main agreements, all four of them are amazing, but one of the ones that come up a lot that's connected to ego is not taking things personally and sitting in a fence. And oftentimes our ego actually, in the psychology term, id ego and super ego. The ego is in the middle and it seeks to be in the reality principle of things. Our super ego is our moral principle. Our id is our primary primitive needs. Think of it like the child. Think of the ego like the stages of early adolescence, and the super ego is when you're supposed to be more seasoned. And so the ego is really raw, and that it's trying to figure out how to manage the reality principle of itself, but also the pleasure seeking principle and also the moral compassing principle. So in that space, it won't always make the right decisions because it's trying to figure out what that middle ground looks like. So think about yourself in adolescence and early adulthood. And so there are a lot of things where you're trying to soothe and please. So what crushing your ego looks like is humility. It looks like self-awareness. It looks like seeking to understand and developing ways of being empathetic to other people that are not like you. And most importantly, not sitting in a fence or taking things personal.
Thank you for that.
Enlightening.
All right. So, talking over people in communication, Mel Robbins had said recently, when someone interrupts you, they have no interest in what you're saying. So, Kristin, why do people interrupt? And is it a lack of respect or something deeper?
I think it's fluid. I think it depends on what comes up for me. And I'm a fan of Mel Robbins, but I'm starting to really see too how people are. Mel's not a therapist. She's not a trained licensed mental health professional. I respect her and her work and a lot of that she does, but there are gray in a lot of things around our behaviors, our responses.
Black and white. Yeah.
Things are not as black and white as they don't respect you, they don't respect. What immediately came up to me is like a person with ADHD or bipolar disorder, or have trauma-like experiences where triggers come up. There are various different reasons why people have a difficult time sitting in spaces where they don't have the cognitive or executive skills to maintain healthy conversation or even hear.
It's ridiculous.
It's complex. Yes, it could be that they don't respect you, but then it's for you to notice that and exit conversation left. It could be a possibility of they're extremely irritable, they didn't sleep, they're highly anxious, they did not get a nap today, they didn't eat, and so they're responsive to that time. It also could be their executive function is not that great, that if they don't say it right away, they may lose it and forget it. And so they're trying to defend themselves in that example too. So it's not a one-way answer. It could be various answers, but it's also for you to objectively to point out to them. When I encounter situations like that, I pause and say, I'm noticing that I'm not able to finish. Is that about you can't hear what I'm saying, or you're having a difficulty with processing or holding space? Sometimes you have to call it out to the person and they're not even aware. And that may be how they also were taught to communication, is to be disruptive. There are people in our lives that are disruptors. You have to be able to recognize, are they disrupting because that's their function, or are they having a malfunction where they have an inability to have adequate and healthy communication?
Roger, do you have a question in that space? Or just anything in general?
I don't necessarily have a question in that space. I'm hearing and I've heard different things that have been added, and I think they've been very, very helpful. And I actually think they've been very, very true. But I just know that a lot of this, it's different forms of communication, and in different spaces, a lot of times there's one side of people who would state their opinion. And if you don't agree with their opinion, they automatically mentally shut down. And then sometimes in their mind, they create narratives that, you might not even align with. And I'm bringing this up because I'm hearing different opinions as we speak now, as usual. And so sometimes it's just that I think that.
Don't hold back. Say what's on your mind, brother.
I said it's just sometimes there are certain.
we need that for the views, bro. I told you that.
With the chest.
There are I just realized how delusional humans are, because
There you
sometimes
go.
people will literally be doing the things that they don't want done to them. And it's so confusing and shocking and unbelievable at times to even witness it. To where I feel like I'm a very outspoken man, but I definitely think that if you ever want me to really shut my mouth, be delusional, because that would shut me up, because I'm usually like shocked by that, like so shocked. And so I think that it goes in with everything, and it even goes back to that why, that you give the things that you want in return. And I'm okay with a good debate when talking to people. I'm okay with communication. I come from a family of people who are very competitive. And so I'm okay with those good forms of communication. I can go out and we can talk about stuff and we can debate. And when we get done with the debate, I literally don't have any harm or any kind of like, malice or any kind of like hard feelings against anybody. And so I do think there are different forms of communication that work and may not work. I do think that ego is a big problem in particular. I don't want to call out, but I think it's an even bigger problem when it comes to males. Our egos are our egos can be really, really strong. And so I do think that all those things like come into play when thinking about these things. But I love hearing people speak, because what I hear and I see and the things I experience don't always align with humans. And what I mean by that is that people say and do one thing, but the experience with them is totally different. And so that lets me know that anytime we're having debates or conversations, us in any setting that you're in, anybody can state their opinion. I'll try to state my opinion. I'll try to back it up with facts and back it up with the why of understanding of why these things happen. But we all know that the takeaway is that people are always going to think what they want to think. And I'm always okay with different opinions. I'm always okay with opinions that are different from mine. But usually what I'm not okay with and what I'll always speak up for is Black people. And so I think that's important to say, because in so many spaces, we don't get the benefit of the doubt. In courtrooms, we don't get the benefit of the doubt. And so I am going to speak up, but that doesn't mean that I'm any less loving of any other race, but I'm going to always speak up for my people, because that is where we don't get enough attention, enough love, enough grace. And so when you hear that, sometimes when people hear that, they try to box me in. And I always tell people, like, no, I'm understanding if something was wrong, and what an outcome could be if you do something wrong, but understanding the why, again, because I work in a community space, in a movement space, the why is important to me to figure out how potentially you can't win every time, but how potentially these things cannot continue to happen in these spaces, and our conversations can change and be different. And we won't be talking about the same situations over and over again. And when people put up that guard to fight against that and just, throw people away, that is why a lot of bad things consistently still happen. And nobody will ever admit that. But and again, these are not, some of these sound like my opinions, but these are facts. And so that's just what crossed my mind when I heard it.
But are they truly facts?
Is it a fact that if something is not, if it's not taught better, that the issues consistently happen? Yes, that's a fact.
What I hear Roderick saying is the example around patterns of behaviors and getting to the roots. So, of course, a lot of the work that I do in therapy, and not in all aspects of in the realm of therapy and psychology, getting to the why. Depending on your theoretical orientation, the getting to the why helps us to understand, well, why do you respond the way you do? I remember last time, Kevin Brown, when we were talking about identity and how you come to terms around your identity, we talked a little bit about the influence relating to your father and what that looks like, and then cultivating it for yourself. So what I hear Roderick saying is getting the understanding around the why allows for information as to how we got here. And without the information around how we got here, how do we create plans for how we go further? Knowing the why does not create a justification for what you did. So when I work with clients and they say to me, let's use your example, Terrence, where your mama did not get beat, the example where I was raised in a household where I saw my father constantly abusing my mother. So then I do that because I thought that's what love was, and that's how you treat women. That is that person's why. That why does not justify the maladaptive negative behavior. But the why gives us the context as to where you learned that, why you thought that was normal. Now, the why doesn't mean that you can't change the what. What happens now?
Oh, so good.
And so that then becomes your responsibility, Kevin Brown, with the emotional context. Why are they not changing? Because it becomes their responsibility to be now accountable. Your father is not to blame for why you hit your girlfriend out at your 25. Your father is to blame because at 5, he created the context and the environment around hitting and abusing women is now comfortable and acceptable. Hence why that young man did not go to Nissan and put $10,000 down, because he was never taught financial literacy and did not have anybody in his life to tell him about saving and finances. However, no one also told you that you can have the right to go steal from somebody else. If you saw that, that's a pattern that was exposed to you. Perhaps it was never explained to you that was wrong.
That it was wrong.
So good. Kev, you want to add something?
I kind of want to ask a question in like the more relationship world when it comes to communication. Can I pivot?
Not
I know, I know you got a trajectory.
We did that already, so we got this last.
Well,
segment.
it's on topic.
Are you going to talk about ego and emotion and vulnerability?
Well, it kind of bridges on what you were talking about, which is understanding the why, but the why doesn't excuse the it doesn't excuse the behavior. And if you understand the why, then there's minimal misinterpretation when communicating with somebody. So it kind of bridges on that.
Okay.
So can we cover that in less than 4 to 5? I hate to say that, but
Sure.
Can we cover that? Okay.
Yeah, I have a
But I do
question.
I do feel like it's important to cover, and I mess up this word all the time.
What
Vulnerability.
word? Oh,
I tear that word up. I chop it and I
This
screw
kind of
it.
ties into that as well.
The,
I don't know why.
the therapist in me wants to know why.
Why you
Why-
messing
why-
up?
You got a mental block?
Why you have a hard time with saying that?
No, no,
Yeah,
no,
but then
I
why
don't
you can't
have-
say it?
I just can't say the word. You know how certain words you just
Why?
can't say? Like, I don't know. Like, it's in my brain. I can't say that word. But I do want to cover that.
It?
I promise it's quick.
Yeah, we got to make it quick because at
Go
ahead.
6:20, we're going with the questions.
Oh yeah,
But that's 8 minutes from now.
yeah, it's cool. It'll take me 60 seconds for this one.
So, all right.
So, Kristin, you're familiar with tone policing, the phrase tone policing?
No.
No, really. Essentially,
Real quick.
It's not what you say; it's how you say
it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm familiar with the complex. Now you got. Why we need all these labels?
I know. I agree.
How we
Sorry, I only got
respond.
60 seconds here.
Got it.
Yeah.
So tone policing, specifically in relationships. A lot of times the issue with communication is around, specifically, as a man from women, but I'm sure men do it as well. We're getting into an argument. They're trying to resolve an issue, but they can't for some reason. And the reason is often it's not what you said, it's how you said it. It's how you talk to me. And I think that, if you have a personal relationship with somebody, there should be a baseline understanding of this person and, what could have contributed to them malfunctioning, like you said, right? Or not being dysfunctional per se. So what can people in a relationship do to recognize these malfunctions, right? To recognize and to take into account that when they're thinking about tone policing, and stopping them just because of how they said it and not focusing on the context of what was said.
Okay, so how you
such a great question.
Yeah, how you preference that context is really the answer. You just said in order for you to have relationship with somebody, there have to be things about them that you know. So there has to be context, knowing their triggers, where that comes from, why the tone triggers you. A tone could trigger one man and female in the relationship, but not trigger another. And it could be the same tone you use with Sally that you're using with Rebecca. And then it's like, well, how come Rebecca's responding that way? So how you described it in terms of you have to know your partner. Knowing your partner and the intricacies around their own sensitivities and their own triggers and their own emotional intelligence and wellness, because now that you describe it as tone policing, that comes up a lot of conversation around what emotional intelligence is. And I know a lot of therapists and coaches on social medias are talking a lot around emotional intelligence being defined as what you're saying and not just how you're saying it, or how you're saying it versus what you're saying. It's actually both. What you're saying and how you're saying, because what your communication allows for people to determine your emotional intelligence. So knowing your partner is what's important. If you know that if you use a certain raised tone with that partner, that it's going to trigger when they were 7 years old and their mom and dad, they used to use that same tone, that's for you to be aware of. Now, is that something you're unable to correct? And you may need to have a conversation around, I'm not sure if I can maintain those things to ensure that I'm not triggering you. So knowing your partner and having that awareness of one another and how you communicate, because we all communicate differently.
Can I ask
and being clear upon that.
Follow up. Go.
All right.
Go.
So do you believe that sometimes it's necessary, you know, from a person talking standpoint? Do you think it's necessary to say things the way that you feel like you need to say them? And do you think that's valid? And do you think it's on the onus is on the person hearing that to take into account their person, what they know about them, and why they felt the need to say it the way that they said it?
You're asking me, isn't on the other person who's the recipient to be responsible for how the other person communicated?
Well, if this is a malfunction and not a dysfunction.
You're asking the recipient to be responsible for the speaker.
Not responsible, considerate.
You're asking the recipient to be responsible
for the absolutely.
No, considerate. You're not responsible, but I'm gonna give
if I'm hearing, so the way this is a great example. The way you're articulating, you would like me as the recipient to be responsible for how I'm hearing you, but not you be responsible for how you're communicating to me.
No, I'm saying the recipient is the onus on them to have grace from time to time. I guess let me clarify. You know, if this, you know what I mean?
Okay, now I get it. Now I get what you're saying. Okay. Okay.
So it wasn't just me yesterday. I'm glad this is happening today. I'm so happy that because I was confused yesterday. But go ahead.
Okay. Having grace in relationships of all kind is important. However, we are all responsible for our own tone, our own feelings, our own responses. I can have grace. However, I've already told you that tone triggers and affects me. Grace, now you need mercy for what happens next.
Yeah.
Because if I've communicated to you, I'm having grace because I understand that you had a hard day. But then because you know that tone triggers me, that means that you have to go deal with your hard day before you come and communicate with me. We have to be responsible for our own emotions and not expect people to receive them the way we want them to.
The reason why I said that was a great question, because correct me if I'm wrong, Kristin. First of all, I think that's unfair. What she just said, I think that's really unfair. That you have to take that into consideration, huh?
I'm midway.
Yeah, I think it's unfair only because it's very similar to like the tone stuff is similar to the whole why stuff, right? Where it's kind of bundled into the emotional state. Your tone is making me feel this type of way and shut down. No. Regardless of how I said this is what I said to you. Do you hear me? And this is how I feel about a situation. I'm clearly upset. I'm frustrated, regardless of the tone. Did you hear what came out my mouth and what I said to you?
No, because I've already told you that your tone triggers me. So I'm no longer worrying about what you're saying. I'm worrying about the fact that you are not respecting that.
What happens?
Go see a therapist.
What happens? Feeling this way.
Go see a therapist and get some help with that.
Yeah, what happens if the context is 100% valid, but the tone, the delivery is just unpalatable? You know what I mean? I guess that's
understood.
You risk not being heard.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's just what it is.
Sure.
You risk not being heard.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, Terrence. In your example, your tone reflects your frustration, which is fair and understandable. Depending upon your audience, your tone would have to be curated to the reception of the audience. And your audience sometimes could be a boardroom, could be viewers. You in this industry, how you present something is going to be a direct reflection of how it's received. It's a huge marketing principle. If we show bright and beautiful covers, it innates within endorphins within someone, and the dopamine triggers because it's green and yellow and rainbow. But we show dark images and gray images, then it elicits different tones or maybe certain tonal levels and things that are down. The same thing happens in how we present ourselves to people. It's not to say, and people say, well, I'm just really passionate. Great. But you also just have to be responsible. There's a possibility that someone may not be able to receive what you're saying because the tone is heard louder than the words.
Why isn't it two sides of the same coin though? Like it's as the one delivering the info, it's your responsibility to deliver it in a way that's palatable. But as a receiver, it's your responsibility to actively listen in a way that's compassionate. You know, why isn't this two sides of the same coin?
Yes, and it's for that person then to choose to say, I have to decipher, you know what? Terrence is reacting because he feels really compassionate about what happened. He feels offended. And so he's responding out of that offense, about that frustration. And so I understand it. And so I can hear that. I also can let you know I don't like it.
Fair.
So I'm hearing you, but I'm having a hard time receiving it and being able to respond to it. So I have to maybe potentially wait. So what you're basically doing is potentially triggering someone's nervous system. Because your nervous system is dysregulated, their nervous system, and you're asking them to come to your level of dysregulation.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's what you need from the person, you have to communicate that first. I'm about to pop off. I need you to pop off with me. Certain friends know that if you want to call me, if you need me to be the rational friend, the therapist friend, to pop off, go outside with you, you better tell me first. So I can know, because I'm going to respond based on how my nervous system is regulated that day.
Matching energies.
So let me know where you are and what you need from me.
So we're cutting out the last segment. I was going to cut that anyway because we run out of time. But now we have to cut segment 5, unfortunately. We can't talk about the word that I can't say, and I'm fine with that. But I'll actually
can't do that in 10 minutes.
No, because we got 9. But the thing is, we got those questions that I think I wanted these guys to ask the 30-second question, and I know it's going to take you some time to respond to that, at least like 2 minutes each. But I'll ask one question, part of the vulnerability word, as far as men being able to talk to their spouse, significant other, and be heard and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling about a certain situation. They start to tear up a little bit, start to cry. Most men, I think, feel like they cannot cry in front of their woman or say certain things in front of their woman. Why is that a thing still in 2025?
This goes back to a lot of what Roger was saying around statistics, in terms of what emotional safety looks like, particularly for men. So we've all kind of been exposed to some aspects of how socialization of genders look. And many of you may have examples of boys don't cry. Boys have to be tough. Boys have to be able to toughen up and not feel it and man up, and all of those things become inherited understanding of what the image of a male looks like based upon people's stigmas around masculinity, and also based upon generations of what it was taught to have to be a male, even taking on the physical stance around the capabilities around male versus female and what strength actually looks like and how it's defined. Those are inherited within our systems across race and ethnicity. And there even are certain racial and ethnic groups where that machoism actually is celebrated more and encouraged. So when you are reared in a way where you have to stand in that machoism, and anything that looks outside of that then comes against your identity as a male, you're going to do the opposite. Females are being taught to be the softer. You have to play with the dolls. You have to be the ones that play house and all of that. So anything that looks outside of the conditioning and how we're socialized and generalized then comes as a conflict around who you are. So if then you weren't raised in a cultural environment, in a household where those cultural norms were not pushed up against, where you had a mother or a father or auntie or grandma that said, no, you can cry as a man, and it was welcomed and accepted, you don't know that there are safe spaces that allow for you to do that, where it's okay to do that. So there are not a lot of males that were given the safety to know that I can identify people that I can be emotionally safe with. And that goes for male and females. You don't have to always cry with everybody. Identify your emotional safe spaces. Know who those people are. But if you're not taught, women are taught to be verbal, to be emotional. They're even labeled in a negative way. You're too emotional. So if it's a negative context for a woman to be too emotional, a man is like, if that's negative, I can't be that.
In close, I don't remember who said it. Somebody was like, we tend to go after somebody that's like safe or the things that we need from our significant other. I think it was you who said it, Kristin. I don't know. Somebody said it today. I heard it. I got to rewatch this. But what you just mentioned, the safe space, the zone, I think even for myself, I don't know about you, Kev, I date what I need moving forward. Not what I know, not what I experienced in the past, but I'm dating what I need from whoever that person is and what they can give me. It sucks that they might not look like me, but it is what it is. We're gonna go. We're gonna go to.
They definitely not gonna look like you.
Well, if I can find somebody who can give me what I need, then we're good. We're golden. All right. So starting with the queen, Miss Tamisha, your question in 30 seconds, please.
Oh, I have to change it because today we had a traumatic experience with Lamaya. We went to Trader Joe's, someone's favorite store.
Good.
And we walked past the produce section. A guy in the produce section yelled, "Everybody get down on the floor." Lamaya grabbed my hand, ran. She just ran as she was supposed to. We don't know. I don't know what happened. By the time I got to my car, the police were pulling up. So we have no idea what happened in the store. I haven't watched the news to see. We're getting in the car, we're calm, but I know that was a traumatic experience for my daughter. When we got in the car, I said, "You were scared?" And she was like, "Yeah, I was scared." But I was very happy that she was keen enough to just grab my hand and run. I was, because we don't know what that could have been or what it would have turned into. But again, like, I feel like as women, and people, I'm going to say people, because I know that y'all have probably experienced traumatic things and then you just go to work the next day, go to school the next day. And you like swallow these things that are actually traumatic experiences for you and never unpack them. So my question is, how do I help her unpack that? I know she has to go to school tomorrow because she's tested. But how do I get her to know that she does need to unpack that, whatever that emotion and those feelings were, but still be able, to continue and go to class tomorrow and test very well and all of the above, but taking into consideration that she experienced that today.
Are you able to answer that in a minute? I know that's going to be tough.
Yeah,
Right.
I can. I'm up for the challenge. First of all, well done to you in terms of the recognition of this is what I have to do. I grab mom. I know what to do. I feel confident to know what to do. Here's what I would encourage. Continue conversation around how she feels and normalize the feeling, because that was not a normal experience. It was traumatic, and that is okay that she feels scared and triggered and uncertain. Normalize her, ask her feelings, normalize her feelings, and ask her what she needs.
Gotcha.
Ask her what she needs and what support looks like.
Kevin,
Thank you,
30 seconds.
A good question, Kevin. A good one.
I got you.
30 seconds.
At what point should people take complete ownership of their lives? Ownership of what happens to them moving forward, barring, what has happened in the past. At what point should they say every decision from this point moving forward, everything that happens to me is a result of my actions and my efforts? At what point should they say that? Not an age per se, but maybe like a developmental stage.
So as early as possible. With Tamisha's example, her asking her daughter what she needs and what she's feeling, and then also translating that into you take what you're feeling and this is how you show up for yourself. As early as we possibly can, take ownership, because how she feels is her own feeling. How and what you need is your own thing. So at this state, if we can teach it as early as possible, for you're responsible for your reaction. This is something that I wish is taught more, emotional regulation in elementary schools, that your response, how you talk to the teacher, your lack of doing your homework, your decision to be a bully, the consequences that come with that are from your own decision making. So as early as possible, you threw a 3-year-old threw a car across the room, and then you don't understand why you can't play with cars anymore. So, but definitely in the next phase of that is our fully development stages around between the ages of 20. They're pushing it back, which is kind of crazy. Between the ages of 24 and 27. So around that is where your full awareness of your cognitive abilities and your responses and your brain is fully developing out into that time. But it can be taught earlier and should be.
Roderick.
You're responsible for you.
Fortunately, we answered my question early on in the episode. So that was my question.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were going to change it or not, but
no.
Cool. All right. And for me, the last one, and I'm going to make it in 20 seconds. Why do we ask God for things we don't have in the present moment? And once we receive them, they don't bring the happiness that we expected. What are we really searching for? What is this whole thing about? Example, less than 5 seconds for me. I asked God for LA, I got it, and it made me happy at first. Then it made me miserable. I asked God for travel, now I travel for work, for a living, and it's on extreme mode. Literally. So that's the question there for you, Miss Kristin.
He also gave me a thesis question and
Yeah, he did. I was just about
a
to say that.
theological one that like my Bible's not even close by. And so I'm going to hit you with a 5 second or maybe a 10. Be clear around the root of your needs. You asked for travel, but what were you really looking for? You asked for LA, but what did you need it to do? Are you really asking for satisfaction, happiness, and contentment, but you asked it in things and not in internal needs?
Being true about what the ask is, Terrence.
Well,
and vulnerable to God about those things.
God often gives us what we need and not what we want.
Ain't that the truth?
Because he sees 5 years from now and you're 10 years from now, and you see your right now.
yeah, I mean, it's just that happiness piece. Like I question that about everybody, like what we're really searching for or what we really need.
Yeah. So if LA, what you were seeking was happiness, you needed to ask for that and ask them to show you how to find happiness in other things, but you asked for a specific thing.
Gotcha.
You asked for LA.
So we're going to close the show right now. We were supposed to have Kristin ask us a question, but we ran out of time. I will say this. When I received the email about future payments, things like that, I was like, whoa, but I'll say in this moment, you deserve every cent and dollar that's going to come your way for your work, for your wisdom and expertise. You really deserve it.
I appreciate it.
So I want to say thank you. Thank you for all 3 episodes. And in the future, if we have any type of live events or anything that we need a therapist for, you'll be the first person that I call.
I appreciate that. I really enjoy connecting with you guys and hearing your perspectives. And thank you for making space for me to share with all of you.
Thank you very much, Kristin.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining us on Say It in 4. I'm your host, Terrence Edwards, Tamisha Blue, Kevin Brown, Roderick Smith, and Kristin Justice. Have a good night and take care.